For the third episode of the Amalgam podcast, I'm joined by my close friend, Jonathan Schmitz. Jonathan is a musician, a worship leader, he's a pastor, but what he's been working on lately has been a podcast called 10 Steps Further that he co-hosts. He also has a Facebook Live project that he's been working on, so we get into all of this, and I really hope you guys enjoy this episode because I had a great time talking to Jonathan. As always, please follow and subscribe, and go ahead and check out Jonathan's stuff as well. We'll provide all the links to his content in the captions below. If you have any suggestions or would you like to become a guest on the show, please get in touch with us using our website, amalgampodcast.com. As always, thanks for tuning in and enjoy this episode. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I've got my friend Jonathan Schmitz here with me, and super stoked to have him on here because he's also been running a podcast himself and has seen some great success in the last couple of months. So what's up, Jonathan? Thanks for joining me, man.
Oh, yeah, man. Happy to be on.
Your podcast is 10 Steps Further?
Yeah, 10 Steps Further. Kind of fell into it. Well, here's the thing. Let's talk podcasts. Are you a listener of podcasts? Like, do you
I'm definitely consuming some podcasts, that's for sure. Yes.
See, and that's the funny thing. Like, I kind of came into this thing. You and I actually talked quite a bit about starting a podcast, like, man, what, year and a half, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
And then I moved away. So I was from Spokane, where you live, and I moved to San Diego. And I wound up at a job where my boss said, hey, I want to start a podcast. And so it just kind of became part of my job. So I do it with my boss / friend / pastor. And it's 10 Steps Further. It's a ministry podcast, outreach podcast. And we've been doing it for, I think we've recorded maybe right around 20 episodes at this point.
And that's amazing because the discipline and just to keep moving forward and staying recorded and staying motivated, that's a lot.
Well, and I feel like the key for me anyway, the key is definitely the social part of it. Is I do it with a team, so you're doing interviews and things like that, and as long as you got people that are with you on the journey, I think that it's a lot easier to just keep the consistency up. But if it all was on me, I don't think I would have kept doing it. Because see, I'm not a listener of podcasts. Like, I mean, there's a few that I have listened to, but I don't have any podcasts that I listen to on a regular basis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a little different than me, but I like to bounce around and I like to try new podcasts and then or I'll have one I'm pretty faithful to and then I'll leave for a while and try some other things. But so when you left, because we had always wanted to work on a project like that together for sure. And then when you left and you were talking about what you were starting over there, and it was super motivating to think, all right, well, he's taking the plunge. He's doing something that we've always talked about. Like,
right.
Well, and there's been a couple other people in my life who have been taking some plunges lately and doing things that, they're not necessarily like crazy outside of the box, but they're not also the like, people aren't just jumping to go into them. And it wasn't jealousy, but it was definitely like
motivation
in like a healthy competitive way, just to use each other as like, look, so someone else is kind of, they're scared or they're uncomfortable or they're fighting through not knowing what to do next just as much. And so you it's a camaraderie as well.
Right. Yeah, I came into it, when I came down here, they were asking me, they're like, so what do we got to do to make a podcast? Like, what are our steps? And I came into it, my whole thing was, hey, guys, if you want to start a podcast, we just got to set up some mics and record something. Yeah. Like, that's where it starts. And so it's cool because watching your process and my process, you did a lot of back work before you started yours, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of the first time, everybody who knows me knows that I have a lot of ideas and I like to just kind of shotgun those ideas into existence.
Right.
And this was the first time I really tried to plan and slow down, talk to people. Yeah. No, it was great. It was
well, and you got your logo, you got everything. See, we came into it and we truly we recorded 4 or 5 episodes before we ever even knew how to put them on iTunes. So we had no logo. Like, in the process, we were just like, okay, we're going to start. These are eventually going to go up. And then we had a lady that we know, and she's an amazing artist, and she whipped up a logo for us.
Nice.
And all of that. But it was all in process. Like, we didn't do it in order at all. We just kind of...
Which is no recipe, though. I mean, there's no formula for anything. It's just... It's on the individuals running the show. And I did as much as I could as far as like graphics and making it look cool and everything. But at the end of the day, and a couple of people have said this, if the content's there, people will follow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, it doesn't mean you can't make things a little flashy, put some...
Oh, man, if you can, you like do it as good as you can and as much as you're inspired to move with it. I mean, I think your process is probably way better than our process. But I think for most people... If the process is too big, if they get bogged down by too many details,
for sure,
because that you didn't have a podcast until you made a recording, right? Until you actually are just like, well, I've got an idea, but it became a podcast when you actually called somebody up and said, let's actually record something and put out some content. Yeah, no,
it definitely was, and it worked out amazing. Danny was awesome. He just like you, Jonathan's also musician and he's a worship leader, and so he performs live all the time. And I've had the benefit of working with you a little bit on that in the past. And the thing about musicians is that you guys have to know how to record stuff properly. And
we've
and it's always generally it's self-taught. But I mean,
I've always been a dabbler. So and whenever anything has been, like you just look out there, and whether it's YouTube media or social media or even Instagram, like, hey, I got a sweet camera, let me see what I can do. I've always, anything kind of creative. I don't even consider myself creative. I'm just more of a doer of stuff. So I'm like, I'm probably better than maybe average people that don't do anything, but like a real artist is like gonna laugh at me, but I'm the one who will just continually put stuff out.
Dude, that's interesting you bring it up like that, because I've had this thought similarly about myself. Like, I'm creative enough to make something,
right?
But when it comes time to like who's a phenomenal artist, that ain't me.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, I can also appreciate a lot because I can see what I can't do.
Right. And here's the thing too, man. I've come across a lot of musicians in my life who are way beyond me as musicians, and I'll ask them. It'll be a common question: what have you recorded? What have you put out into the world? And I think even I haven't put enough stuff out, but these guys, they've got just a gift. They've put hours and hours and hours of time into their craft, and most of them have nothing to show for it. And their reason is, my stuff isn't good enough yet. And so here I am. I'm like, my stuff is never going to be good enough, but I'll keep putting it out there, right?
It's already published.
Yeah, and what you find is, a lot of real musicians, like gifted musicians, they'll mock the people who have stuff on the radio, and because they're just like, oh man, that stuff's not quality. And the truth is it's like, but you know what? They got into a studio, they recorded something, they put it out into the world, and
took the risk,
and somebody loves it, So I think that's what it is. There, we can just become obsessed with perfectionism, or we can just start kind of putting stuff out and see what happens.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you don't know what's going to come around the corner, and all your planning can help you move things along, get things started and everything. But there's still that go live moment. That you can kind of continuously push farther away from you.
Right.
And you might not realize it.
Yeah.
And sometimes just knowing when to leave well enough alone, or when to kind of scrap things and hit the drawing board again. It's a delicate dance, but that's what I've always admired about you and tried to draw motivation from, is that like this is all experimentation. I'm trying to figure out. You got to throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks.
Yep. And you're gonna learn in the process. The more you do it, you'll get better at some of it, and then you'll learn things in the process of what you like, what works, what doesn't. But I have a friend that plays guitar with me, and he has a guitar podcast. And we were talking to him about it, and we're talking about our early ones and all this. And he says, man, our early ones are so embarrassing to go back and listen to the first ones what we did. But now he's got, I think his Instagram following is like 10,000 people or something like that.
It's astronomical.
And he's like,
to me.
when he's like, I have no idea why people follow us on Instagram. Like, that's not their real main source of how to get people. You know, they're just like, but people follow me on Instagram. And it's, you know, so I don't know how many people are listening. A few thousand are listening to his podcast on a regular basis. But he just talks about, like, our first ones were terrible. And truly, there's, you know, probably half the population would hear his current ones and say they're terrible. But he's got this very committed following of people. Like, he's even told me, he's like, dude, if you're not into like electric guitar pedals, and goofy humor, you're not gonna like my podcast.
But that's the beauty of podcasts. That's the thing, and that's part of the reason I wanted to try and create my own. Before, you know, Danny was mentioning it. He's like, he's seen the build up, and eventually there'll be a collapse. But we're a ways away from that. But I'm kind of digressing. The point I'm trying to make is that podcasts are they're kind of like the only way you can get that unfiltered perspective of a niche opinion, and it's safe. Yeah, you know, because no one's scrubbing through every podcast episode published that's put on iTunes or all over the internet, and trying to find this opinionated, you know, host or whatever who said the wrong thing. It's like you can, because you know your audience more than, I don't know, like the audience is following you because they agree with what you say already, you know,
and they're learning from you and they trust you. Like,
the trust is there.
Jack, who does the podcast 10 Steps Further with me, he listens to a couple podcasts, but one of them he is a sports podcast, and he says they don't even talk about sports half the time. And he's like, I don't care what they talk about. I feel like they're my friends, right? I mean, it's just like, I feel like I'm connected to them. And I think that's what we're trying to create with 10 Steps Further, is just, you know, we want to talk about substance, spiritual things, and yet at the same time, we're just like, but we're hopeful that people just feel like they're sitting at a table with us and we're just having a discussion.
I find myself, when I listen to podcasts, laughing out loud. Yeah. Or, you know, like you get an idea of somebody's personality, and then you can kind of see where they're going with stuff, or when they're playing jokes or whatnot, and it's really personable. It's just it's genuine. Yeah. And man. I mean, I remember when I first started, I knew podcasts existed, but I never really liked talk radio to begin with, so I thought it was just that. Yeah. But then you realize these are very specific podcasts. Every channel is so different from the next. It's not. This is not a corporate agenda, or this is not a, you know.
Well, it's one of those things now that everybody can do it, you know. And so you think, you know, people think of their favorite podcasters, you know, and I think of my friend who's actually got a following. And they think of him, and I've been to his house. I've seen his setup, man. He's just like you and me. He's just a guy with a couple microphones and some gear, but he's got this access, and he's been doing it for, I think, 4 years now. And so he's developed, you know, their style, their flavor, and their audience.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of the stuff that's coolest about the internet and about the technology today is that you give access and all these tools, and everybody has the medium to create something. Right. And you know, if you're not pushing creativity, then you've got a lot of just kind of spiraling inward kind of mindset. And so
we have such an opportunity, I think, now to have a voice.
Yes.
And people, I don't think people understand the significance of that we have such an opportunity to speak into the world in a significant way. And so, you know, and truly we can put something out there that has the potential to reach thousands of people. And we're taking pictures of our breakfast, you know, like that's like, we don't know what to do with all of this. Oh, what could I do? Yeah, and I could change the world, or I could show you what I ate, you know? And so, I feel like podcasting is just one more avenue that we can do that.
Yeah, that's a great point for sure. So, can we talk a little bit about what you've seen as far as growth and what you guys have tried to do or what you've been implementing to
Yeah.
see that growth?
Yeah, again, this is just kind of an ongoing discussion with us. We started out and we put it out there. Now I work at a church, and so we already have an audience, right? I mean, there's probably 700 people at the church that,
Right.
And so we talk it up there. Hey, check out our podcast, and so that was our starting point. I try to use Facebook as a means of communication as well. I'm always looking at Facebook of how do I speak into the world and how do I contribute to this really messy conversation in a positive way. And so really a good chunk of our listeners on our podcast are actually people that I have spoken to through Facebook in a way. So that's been something. We're still trying to figure out paid advertising. We want to drop money on it, but we don't know yet because paid, advertising, I think in social media today is largely video. And so we're really trying to figure that all out. How do we do video to promote our podcast, all that kind of thing.
For sure.
Have you done any paid advertising or anything like that? Or
I have in the past with different random projects. Again, I've made some. If you know me, I've made a T-shirt or two.
Right. Yeah.
Tried to sell some graphics that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the Teespring stuff, which was like the second round of experiments in selling stuff.
Right.
That's when I dabbled in a little bit of Facebook ads, and the tools they have are awesome.
Yeah.
And you can narrow down and find that niche market that you want for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, the Trump card one I made.
Yeah.
Which, like right at the time he was elected, I made that card of Trump and he's flipped upside down, and I put that on there. And then when I went to the Facebook ads, you just go Republican, whoever voted Republican, or you just kind of like. And what's funny is that the problem with that is that the people who voted for Trump were never going to spend the kind of money I was asking for a T-shirt because their generation would never consider something like that a good idea. So
that's funny.
That was a little bit of irony there, but that was one time. I did one with I had a BHAM shirt where I took I zoomed out of BHAM on the Maps app.
Right.
On the Mac, not on the phone, and then took a screenshot and then messed with that in Illustrator a little bit, and obviously just cut it out of BHAM.
Yeah.
And tried it for that as well. So
was it? Did you find success with the ads at all, or did you?
I mean, you want likes and you want people looking at your stuff,
right?
Yeah, you're gonna see. I mean, if for some reason, and I was doing something wrong with possibly how I have my accounts connected or something, but the first couple of times I was doing it, when I had it linked to Instagram as well, it was, like 150 likes on a photo from somebody who gets like an average of 20 to 30, right now.
Yeah.
And so you'll see that, and you'll see a couple comments, but you'll see some people click the link, but it's not near the amount of people who it's even reaching. So then the science behind that, like impressions and everything, and trying to get people to swipe on your Instagram photos, left or right, or the longer you can get them to add that extra step of engagement, I guess the better your stats are and whatnot for.
Well, a product, a product like a T-shirt or something is very visual. A product like a podcast is very not visual, So
you're taking
really
a risk when you're hitting that subscribe button. You know, like you don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, those are things we're talking about as far as promoting it. It's a lot of word of mouth, just trying to keep it present. Couple of tips that I've learned along the way from different sources of media is just keep content coming, and even scheduling it. Having a day where people can expect that the next one's coming out, and I read once that do something where people will miss you if it wasn't there. And so you want to have the expectation, you want to build the expectation that, hey, I will be there, I can be trusted every week at this time or every day at this time, however you do it. you say, I'm going to be there, and that'll build, because what you want truly is not just somebody to listen to a podcast, but you really want to have somebody who says, hey, I'm on this journey with you. I'm going to check back on a regular basis, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're in it together.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you can see it with podcast hosts. I mean, they're so appreciative of their following and their subscribers and the people that support the show.
Right.
You know, you can just tell. And it's a I don't know what the word is for the symbiotic relationship where you're, you know, one can't exist without the other. But,
yeah. It's very much a community. It can become a community. And that's, I think, what we're building, but we're still small. I mean, we have seen, you know, our first one kind of spiked. We got a lot of people that we knew to listen to it. And then it took a dive real fast, you know, because the truth is, no matter, no matter what you're putting out there, I sound like I'm sitting in a smoky room with a cigarette, you know. I've had a cold for like 2 weeks. But you know, it took a dive because the truth is the majority of people who come across your podcast are not going to like it. Majority of people are just, you know, like I don't know that I would listen to our podcast if I wasn't on it and producing it. I like the format. I just don't listen to podcasts, you know, so that's part of it. And so I feel like that's one of the things that you got to consider is so ours took a dive. But then it's climbed up way beyond what we've had that first week. We got, and our numbers aren't massive, but for us, we're pretty excited. We got over 1,100 downloads of our podcast in the month of January, which
awesome.
The previous month was under 500. And so it's like, wow, you know, and we can actually look at the chart and see that the thing's climbing. And like I said, we haven't even uploaded 20 episodes yet.
Oh, nice! So you got a huge backlog.
So we've got 5 or 6. I think we've maybe put up 15. So we've got 5 or 6 that are recorded, that are just on my computer waiting for my date. You know, because we do Sundays, or not Sunday. We do Tuesdays. So we record during the week and we just keep them going. And I don't even necessarily post them in order. I just kind of post them based on.
That's awesome.
Which one I think should be next.
No, that's awesome. Podcast I listen to, 10-minute podcast that I used to listen to a while ago, they would do that. They would record it was only 10 minutes, so they could spend half a day together and record half dozen episodes. Right. You know? And so that's awesome. That's super smart.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, we had 5 of them before we ever launched one. And here's what's interesting as well. So this is how ours started. We already were sitting in a room. We were recording once a week. We were recording podcasts. And we had probably 4 of them done. And then the shooting in Las Vegas happened.
Right.
And Jack said, hey, I want to do a podcast on the shooting in Las Vegas. Well, I asked him, I was like, so if we do that, that's got to be the first one. Like, we can't sit on it for a month. We've got to get it out this week.
Yeah.
And so that was actually the first one we uploaded, but it was about the 5th one we recorded.
Yeah.
You know, and so we went live.
Crazy start, man.
Yeah, right. And then the second one was way worse because it was our first one, and the quality was much worse. Like mics we used the bad mics and all that. Yeah. So, but that's just been kind of our process, and we're loving it. I mean, it's just super fun. We've actually gotten, you know, so it's me and Jack who do it, but we bring in guests. But we're not looking for big shots. We're just looking for people we like and that we want to sit down and talk to.
Yeah, that's cool. The format is great, and what I like about it, and what I've always liked about Jonathan, is that he's when he's communicating the message that he's giving, if he's preaching that Sunday or things like that, it's the delivery is so relatable, and it, you know, and I didn't grow up going to church, and so it's the intimidation is definitely there no matter what. And so what I like about your guys' podcast is that even though it's 2 lifetime pastors, you guys you're actually kind of fighting from the perspective of, you know, you're kind of trying to talk each other out of everything. I don't know. It's awesome.
Yeah, and we don't always agree, and Jack actually likes it when we disagree.
because that keeps it honest.
Yeah,
you know,
and so he'll pick things intentionally that he's just like, I don't think we're going to agree here, and we'll have a full podcast that we don't record before we do a podcast, which is super funny.
That's what I wanted to ask about, was your guys' pregame.
Yeah,
you know, how does your process go for when it's time to sit down? Today you're recording an episode,
right? We used to do we've done one or two kind of cold starts, and they cool. just feel rough. They feel like we're coming in, we're not primed. And so typically now what we'll do is we'll just come in and we'll have a conversation that'll last anywhere from, I don't know, probably 15 minutes to 45 minutes, where we're just talking about, like, what are you thinking about saying? You know, what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, and you got to kind of plan it out a little bit.
Right. Well, and sadly, a lot of our best stuff is in that time that we're not recording.
Yeah.
You know, and then we're just like, oh, man, I should have said that. You know, I mean, we tell stories and things, and then after we're done recording, we'll rehash again. But the big thing is we just enjoy talking to each other.
That's good.
You know, we just enjoy. We would have these conversations if there was no microphone set up, and so that's
and now
our
you're
process.
Just trying to kind of capitalize on those because they're going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, and that's what my friend Ryan with the Guitar Podcast, he said the same thing. He said him and his buddy that does it with him, he said they were having these conversations constantly about guitar stuff, and they're like, dude, we should just set up a mic and put up a podcast. We're already doing it. We're already having the discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, and I could say the same thing about this one. Mm-hmm. I love talking to people about their specific trade or their craft.
Right.
And understanding the discipline or the intensity or the just out of this world. I would never think of that, or I didn't know that existed, and you do that for a career type thing.
Right.
And so those are fun because I love finding out what I don't know, and I love asking questions. It's the exact same thing. We're doing it anyways.
Let's set up a microphone. Right.
Yeah. Who's got a mic around here?
Yeah.
So the other project you're kind of working on, do you want to talk about the Facebook Live?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I don't even know if it's a project. So I'll tell you kind of how that all happened, and I'll tell you what I'm doing. Every morning, most mornings, if I'm not in another part of the country or something, I will be live on Facebook. I go 6 a.m. to 6:30, and we do a Facebook Live, basically a Bible study. And I'm just talking to whoever's there. And the reason why I did it is because I was watching this dude. He's a fitness guy, and he had a 45-minute YouTube live stream that was pre-recorded. So I didn't even catch him live. I caught him after the fact. And it was very casual. It was very, just open sort. Like just the way he did it was not polished at all. And I loved it. And I felt like, man, that's a great way to communicate content. And so I was like, I want to try it. You know, I'm in ministry, so I'm going to try it. And I'm just going to do a Bible study. And I knew most people, like, they're not going to want to see it. Even Christian people that I know, they're not going to want to be part of it. It's one of those things. I don't think I would be part of it. I don't think I would watch it. But I just had this idea of I wanted to give it a shot. And so I asked two friends of mine, a married couple. I said, hey, would you guys help me get started so I'm not just talking to open air?
Yeah.
And so they jumped in with me. And they're still there. They're there pretty much every day.
Nice.
But there's anywhere from 15 to 30 people that are getting up in the morning live with me and just doing this Bible study thing with me as we're just kind of walking through the Bible. And the prep time on that is, again, I wake up at 5 a.m. With zero prep having been done, and by 6 I'm live. And awesome. So it's like, okay, here we go. I've got less than an hour to learn everything that I'm going to share in this moment, but it's been super fun, and I'm meeting people through it, and it's the same people every day. And every once in a while I get new people coming through, and I know I get people that kind of drop off for a while, but some of them will come back. And and I mean, life happens. Everybody's got their cyclical thing with, like, I just can't do something right now. Right.
But it's never like you never drop it off completely.
Yeah, and it's just a resource. I do it because I enjoy the social side to it, But what's funny is a good chunk of those people have become listeners of our podcast. And so it's all tied together. You know, those people are just like, hey, we love you, but we would much rather listen to you have a conversation with somebody, you know, and that's probably not true. They actually like me. They like both formats. And so, you know, they like the podcast. It's a completely different format than what I'm doing live. And they're not connected. You know, the Facebook thing I'm doing is not through my church. It's just something that I do. It's been fun.
That's great. That's great. And it's organic, and the people can, if it reaches one person, if one person is waking up and you didn't know that person before it started,
right,
that's a success.
And
you got to try. It's another thing I'm trying to do with this project is to try and find the success in the small things, and don't worry about what's missing. Work towards fixing it, you know. And take the little bites where you can.
Well, I mean, if there's the thing about media too is if there's 5 people who love what you're doing, there's 1,000 people who love what you're doing. They just haven't found you yet. You know, we have access to millions upon millions of people. And so it really is, you know, just doing it long enough, getting it out there enough to find those people who will love what you're doing and just keeping going. And if there's 1 or 2, if nobody likes it, maybe you got to find something else to do.
Maybe but hit the drawing board.
Right, but if you've got a crew of people, if there's people who are saying, "I love this thing," there are more out there who will. You just got to find them.
Yeah, and you will be surprised. You'll be surprised where that marketing or that demographic pops up. That's super into whatever it is you're working on.
And you'll be surprised on 2 sides, right? You'll be surprised at the people like, wow, I never would have expected this person. Like this Bible study that I'm doing. I've got people I went to high school with, so I haven't talked to them in 20 years. They are waking up every single day. And they're listening to me do a Bible study. And then I've got people that I thought these people will be totally into it. They don't care. They don't want to have it. You know what I mean? So
nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. So I think the surprise comes on both sides. I mean, you're going to be surprised. The people you would say wouldn't be interested are going to be interested. The people you think are going to be interested are going to let you down. They're not going to be interested.
Yeah. And that can become kind of a shock for some people. I've been shocked by that before. Like, man, I could have swore this person would be all over this.
Right.
But
no.
So, that's awesome. The one thing I wanted to say back about your podcast, about your guys' format for starting and stuff. Where I would like to get, and I don't know how this would work for you guys, but I would like to get to a point where I'm hitting record from the beginning, and then what the only thing you'd cut out or something would just be that, like, all right, we're going to start this off officially now, but you would just, I don't know, if you could somehow to get that.
To capture the whole
organic beginning. Yeah,
we've talked about that. We actually have one, it's not been uploaded yet. We have one where we had, we ended it, but we kept it rolling because we knew that we weren't done, but we kind of had a time frame. We sit anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes on our podcasts, and this one, you know, we cut it off, but we just left it rolling, and we got probably another 15 minutes. And when I upload this one, a couple days later, we're gonna upload a bonus one because we really felt like the content of that 15 minutes was good as well, and so we're gonna tack that on a couple days later as a bonus.
I like that idea a lot. Little supplemental prologues or stuff like that to the episode. That's cool. That's a great idea. You've put some stuff on YouTube because you perform live, obviously, as a worship leader all the time. But you've done a lot of YouTube stuff, and can you? And I know you've written a song, right? You've written songs.
I've written 2.5 songs.
2.5 songs.
So the half song is an actually completed song, but I did not write the lyrics. And then I wrote 2 songs that, and so the process of writing was awesome, but it's like I don't have a discipline for writing, and so that's why I've only written 2.5 songs.
When I've always known you to be really interested in how your equipment around you, whether it's just an iPad or your phone,
Mm-hmm.
you're always figuring out, even if you're not writing stuff, you're still trying to record yourself though. So you might not have written a lot of songs, but you definitely have recorded yourself covering songs.
Yeah, I've done a lot of worship songs. It's kind of when I started putting stuff on YouTube, there was I looked it up for worship songs on YouTube, and I was like, I had no idea how it worked. I'm like, I don't know if the copyright, Nazis are going to come after me.
Yeah, you never know.
Or any of that. So and that was like early days when I started that. And I think that there were two guys, and one was in Australia and one I think was in Singapore, that were putting worship songs, Christian worship songs on YouTube. And I'm like, well, I guess I could just try it. And so I started putting songs on that way. And again, real sporadic. I'll do it, I'll put 4 on in a month, and then I won't put any on for another year. And then I'll do it again. And so that's something, now that my job revolves around this, I'm actually full-time worship ministry. One of the things that I want to do as far as media is I really want to get into the same kind of groove we are with the podcast, that every week I put up a song. Now, I'm not in that routine yet, but that's one of the visions for the future.
It's a goal.
Yeah.
That's good. That's awesome, though. Something you just said about you'll do 3 or 4 songs in a month. So
Right.
a crazy burst of work.
Yep.
And then nothing for that particular area of your life for a while. And I used to beat myself up about that kind of stuff.
Right.
Like, man, there's something wrong that I can't be consistent and consistently disciplined about this.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you keep coming back to something, I don't think the breaks matter in the long run.
I think it depends on what your focus is. If your focus is creativity, then you're right.
But if it's trying to make money, that's not the right formula.
Or even trying to build an audience. I think
you're right.
I think the majority of the people that follow me on YouTube, and even a lot of the people who follow me for the purpose of music on Facebook, are over me. They're just like, is he ever going to do anything again? Like, I'm not waiting around. As where there's a band, the biggest band on YouTube, I'm pretty sure they still are, is a band called Boyce Avenue. And Boyce Avenue takes every major song that's out there. But, they take the top 10 on iTunes, pop songs, and they do an acoustic version of it. And they've been doing it for years. And every single week they would come out with a song. And they're good for sure. If you look back at their old stuff, they're nowhere near as good as they are now. But man, these guys have millions of people following them. Now there's other people out there who are just as good, who have nowhere near the following, because they didn't have the consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're expecting people to tune in, for sure, you got to be on the ball. And your strategy about picking a day and meeting that date no matter what, so people can build that trust with you. You're absolutely right, for sure.
Like, have you ever watched the TV show? Like, you watched the pilot, and then the next week you're just like, well, it's not a great show, but it's good enough. So you watch the next one, and you watch the next one, and you actually got through the whole season of it, probably on Netflix, but you got through the whole season of it, not because it was the best show you've ever seen, but just simply because, they have another one. What happens next? What happens next? Versus if they had that same show and like one comes out and you have no idea when the next one's coming. And then that one comes out, and then you have no idea when the next one's coming. So I really feel like those types of things, to really get that commitment from people, you've got to have the consistency. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm probably the worst person to ask about finishing TV shows because I have like a 10% completion rate with my TV shows.
That is actually something to be admired, I think. Like that you can't effectively
I'm probably
consume
filling
media.
that time with something else.
Right.
So like video games is the culprit. So I'm not trying to brag about that.
Right.
That's a great point though.
Yeah.
And if you can use that and kind of dual purpose that as motivation and challenge yourself in the right way, you can use that to fuel the drive and keep things going and make it easier on yourself. So you got to figure out how to tap into this stuff and help yourself help yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think some of the things that you got to figure out what makes you love it. And then you also got to figure out what makes you hate it. You know, because there's something about it that you'll say, this is awesome. And this is why I keep going back to it. But then the thing that's causing you not to keep doing it, there is something about it that you don't love. There's something about it that's just like, man, I'm getting burned out when I do it. And once you figure those things out, like for me, the reason why I'm looking at this podcast that we're doing and saying this thing has no end is because I like the people I'm working with, and I'm working with people. I'm an incredibly social person. And so music, I love music, but it's lonely. You know, so when I'm, you know, dinking around, recording and making videos or whatever I'm doing and putting it out there, it might be awesome and polished, and I really liked the final product. I will often find that it burns me out because it's not social at all.
Ah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So the thing is, you know, it's just a lonely process to do it. And so that's one of the things that I'm looking at with music is I've got to make this a team effort somehow, and then I know that we can move forward.
Yeah. And it's nice to have people you can turn to and say, you're specializing in this.
Right.
And I know you're gonna kill it, and I know you're gonna knock this out of the park.
Yeah.
And that team, and then when you accomplish something together, it's even better.
Right.
You see that end result.
Yeah.
Everything get to what you've been working towards.
Yeah. Yeah.
What when you started the podcast, what was the biggest fear you had before you kicked it off?
You know what? Okay. Yeah. I only had really one thing that I felt like was a fear for me, and this might not relate to a lot of people who listen, but here's the thing: we do a podcast that really deals with spiritual things. You know, we're a Christian based, but we're kind of open to, man, who's our audience? Like, who's out there? Who are we speaking to? Now, I have strong opinion and conviction about certain things. Jack also has strong opinion and conviction about certain things. We don't always have the same views on things, and he's my boss. So I'm just like, do I really want to sit down in a place where I am publicly sitting down in a place where I could possibly be in a disagreement with the guy who decides whether or not I keep my job, you know? and it has turned out that fear has completely subsided.
Okay.
But for me, that was a thing, you know, like, I mean, it was early on in my start where I'm working that we started doing this podcast. And this was just like, man, am I really going to feel a freedom to share my voice, to share my thoughts? And if I don't, the podcast isn't going to be good. And if I do, man, we could be at risk, right? So and so that was the biggest thing is, and I think maybe in a relatable way, other people who are out there seeking to kind of put their voice out into the world, I think people just deal with that as well. I actually had more fear starting this Bible study in the morning than I did with our podcast.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Mainly, you know, I just know, like, you know, I rarely so far, but if we keep doing it, I know we'll get it more. But I've gotten some trolls who will just sit on there and just drop really like dumb rude comments stuff. And rude stuff, and, you know, trying to drop websites to porn sites and things like that. You know,
dude, what a waste.
Yeah. And so, you know, you deal with that, or you know, and my biggest fears is people who just are people that I respect that are smarter than me, who are listening to me and saying, Johnny, you don't know what you're talking about. You know,
I definitely agree with you that one there for sure. That's you're afraid of, like, someone being like, man, you're so full of it.
Right.
You do not know what you're talking about. What are you doing up there? Why did you put a mic in front of yourself? Why did you ask everybody to download this and listen to you? You don't know. Right.
Yeah. That's I think the biggest, that's the biggest fear for me. Like I've told my wife about, you know, when I put a lot of stuff out there. I feel like, I want to put more, but I put plenty of stuff out there, and I've told her, I'm like, you know, my biggest fear is the people I know. You know, I have no fear about, you know, 50 people in Georgia who think I'm the worst person alive. I don't care. You know, if there's people out there in another part of the world who just hate what I'm doing,
You'll never cross paths with.
Yeah, but it's just like if I have to show up at work and they're just like, "Hey, I heard your podcast. You're an idiot." Like
that'd be tough to
that's
walk
where it gets
into
difficult.
every day.
Yeah, or even if your family hears it and they don't like what you're saying, or that kind of stuff. That matters to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I told my wife, like, you don't have to listen to every episode,
right?
Just because
I don't think my wife's listened to almost any of our episodes of our podcast.
Yeah, she's like, I listen to you every day.
Exactly.
I wanted to talk about content creation, and I wanted to ask you, do you ever get tired of consuming and you feel like you need to be using your creativity or learning or challenging yourself to do something different, and that's why you do these bursts of like 4 songs a month, or like you get into a new avenue of creation or expression?
Yeah, for me, there's a giant gap, so out in the world right now, there's so much opportunity. Like my kids, one of them has an iPad, one of them has an iPod, and the other one has an iPhone. They're just at different stages in life. Yeah. So basically, they all have access to supercomputers from when I was a kid. Yep. And what you can create on these devices is unbelievable. But what do they create? They create nothing. They've got a major awesome camera. They've got audio recording equipment that's phenomenal. They've got all these things that they could do, and they don't. And so for me, I feel that pressure, where we live in a time where we could do so much, we can create so much, but those same devices, we can consume so much. And so I feel like there is this battle between consumption and creation. And successful people, I think in any walk of life, successful people are the people who put their energy into creation, and people who are not successful are the people who put their energy into consumption.
Yeah,
and so
I mean, in a lot of cases it's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I just it's like if I spend the time that I spend on Netflix, putting songs out, maybe I have a full-on outside music career online. I mean, just you look at the time spent, or just the time that I spend, looking at Instagram. Your phone will tell you how much time you spend on those apps.
Oh, that's right.
And then if you look that up and you're just like,
out.
What could I have done if I had spent 20 hours a week instead of on Instagram creating something? So I always feel that pressure, that tension of, we have the resources to have a voice and to really just affect the world in radical ways. But consumption will kill us. And the people who are consuming the people who are creating all the stuff we're consuming are the winners.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to be a creator. That's
that's what somebody on one of the podcasts I listened to, that's what they said. They were actually talking about people like you were talking about, that they get on and their entire goal is to make your day ruined or to make you feel terrible for what you're trying to put yourself out there and do.
Yeah.
And this guy's talking about, he's like, I don't look at the comments because I'm too busy trying to create content for you guys. I'm not going to waste my time arguing with some dude or some person who has nothing better to do. Yeah. And so that really hit me of like, whoa, what am I doing? Right. And I've always tried to have something going on, but nothing really scared me or made me think was outside the box enough until this project. And so that's why I'm kind of here. Right. Right. But that content creation, anything. It could be anything. You could just be making, going into GarageBand and making goofy noises, or just recording yourself reading something you wrote, or anything. It doesn't matter. You just, and you got to lead by example too. You can't go around asking everybody to get their heads out of their phones if you're not doing that yourself. Right. So that's what I have tried to do, that as well, as tried to limit why I use my phone. And I've got some books on here, and that's what I've tried to take that and replace the little games or the Reddit Instagram still get me pretty good though. So
yeah, I mean, I would definitely say I'm one who, even still, I would say, man, I spend way too much time consuming. But it is that motivation of just like, because here's another, I think, big thought for me is consistency is everything as well. Like, I'm a routines guy. I don't know if you're a routines person, but I'm very much like, I need my blocks of time. If I'm going to do anything of value in the long term, then I have to say, every day I'm going to do this. Every week I'm going to do this. You know, I've got certain things. Now, I don't book myself super tight, but I do create patterns in my life where it's like every Wednesday I'm recording a podcast. Every Sunday I'm playing a worship set. Every Saturday I'm practicing with my team. You know, so I've got just different things throughout my days and weeks that I say this. I'm coming back to this every single time, and it's not just going to be like, oh, do I feel like doing this? I'm just going to keep coming back. And I want to make more of those routines in my life because I feel like all long-term success is going to come from that.
That's awesome. That's kind of similar to what Jason was talking about in the episode recorded on Wednesday, was that you don't block yourself in and punish yourself or make yourself feel bad because you didn't accomplish something, but you give yourself enough of a structure, enough of a list of things to do that you can get it done. And sometimes you might come down to the wire and you're doing a bunch at the end of the week, but that's a theme there. And I'm noticing that already. I've only recorded 3 episodes, and it's like, this is what people do. You know, sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alrighty. Well, so the resources section is what I like to give the guest an opportunity to share something that the audience can take home and implement or consume themselves or use. And it's a tool, it's a piece of inspiration, it's a book, it's anything. And so go ahead whenever you got time to. You don't have to if you don't want to dive right into it. But yeah. So I've got a couple things. I've got something that I use as a resource. Probably a lot of people, if they're interested in your kind of content, have heard of a guy named Seth Godin. And Seth Godin is like, he's a marketing dude. And I've never met the guy, never seen the guy in a conference or anything, but I read a couple of his books and I found out he has a blog. And his blog is, he every single day for like 40 years, he has been writing. And he writes, oftentimes it's like a paragraph. His whole post for the day is a paragraph. But they're so kind of inspirational. They make you think. They get the wheels turning. And it's just like SethGodin.com. You click on his face and you get his blog. And it is super. His whole thing is to activate people. That's his whole goal, just to get people to make stuff. And so I go back to him all the time, because I'm like, I know Seth Godin would just tell me to keep making stuff. So I would encourage people to go that route. It's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
As far as the other resources, I think that the things that we offer, I feel like, even though this audience is largely, probably going to be people who are creatives, kind of making stuff, but at the same time, we have a podcast, and I'm doing what I'm doing on Facebook. Just look up Jonathan Schmitz on Facebook, and you'll find me. And it's just, I feel like the content that we're making there, as Jack was saying, he's like, man, the stuff we're speaking about, this is words of life. Like, we could reach people, and these people's lives truly could be changed and affected. And we don't, especially our podcast, we don't come at it from a real religious point of view, but we are definitely believers that God will use it to speak into people's lives. So I would say, as a resource, that is for anybody. But yet at the same time, there are going to be people who aren't going to want it. So,
yeah, but definitely check it out, because it's definitely designed to reach anybody. And so it's a great podcast. I highly recommend it for everybody.
Yeah. It's been fun.
Awesome.
It's been super fun. And you had some stuff. What resources you wanted to share?
Cool.
I want to hear what they are.
All right, cool. So I've been thinking about this one for a while. I commute to work. I'm driving at least 25, 30 miles a day. And
I drive about a half a mile a day.
That's good. That's perfect.
And
man.
I live in San Diego. Everybody's like, the traffic down there is terrible. I'm never in it. I live right by my office. Yeah. So anyway,
that's awesome.
Carry on.
That's awesome. Good for you, man. So what I have to share with everybody is the Washington State Department of Transportation app, and it's
nice.
The reason I like this one is because it gives you a map, gives you real-time traffic, and it allows you to use traffic cams to kind of see your route. So, and then you can save specific traffic cams as favorites. So I'll go in and I'll have 3 or 4 spots on my commute that I'll look at depending on what time I'm going home or taking off to work.
Right.
And, you know, I have to drop off stuff at FedEx or UPS all the time. I've got trying to meet people, record episodes and things like that. And so when you're moving a lot and you're running around a lot, it's great for me. And so that's something I've been wanting to tell a lot of people about.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
but I live in California, so that doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
but
you're gonna have to check out their Department of Transportation. I don't know how they.
Well, here's the thing:
how dedicated they are.
My wife just went in. This is just a funny story, so I'm going to tell it. My wife just went into the DMV because her driver's license, and it was a Washington driver's license, expired. So she had to get a new license, but she had to get her California license. They said that they needed her marriage certificate. She brought it. Yeah. So because, you know, for a woman, she's changed her name to my name. And so her birth certificate has a different name on it. So she brings it in there and they said, this is not a legal document. And so my wife's like, she comes home. She's like, I don't know if we're legally married. You know,
what the heck?
18 years into this game. And it's like, our marriage certificate is not what it's supposed to be. So I don't know what that, you know, I don't know if that's just California.
I think, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes, I don't know. When we got the birth certificate from my daughter, I thought that was it, and they were like, "No, you still need to go down."
There's always another process.
Get some more records. Yeah, so maybe there's another formal one, but that's this whole time you guys thought you were married, man.
I did your wedding, so you might want to double check because I don't even know if I'm married. So man,
just this chain reaction.
Yeah,
hey, wait, you've married a couple people, man. What's going on here, dude?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we think I married him. Well, you should. Yeah, you may not be married right now.
Oh man.
So yeah,
that's hilarious.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they wrote it in the paper. So.
That's got to be legal. That's got to be the end all. That's funny.
Man. Cool, man. Well, Jonathan, this was awesome. I'm glad we connected on the podcast stuff. I know we didn't want to talk a whole lot about you as a musician and everything because you were ultra talented with a guitar and and your vocals are amazing. So please check out Jonathan why don't you tell them where they can find you?
Well, you just look up my name anywhere. Man, if we have another time for a funny story, you look up Jonathan Schmitz and you find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook.
We got time for sure.
And you got, so you just look up my name, Jonathan Schmitz, on YouTube, Facebook. I got Instagram, but I haven't figured out how to make it valuable yet. But here's the funny thing. The first thing that'll pop up when you look up Jonathan Schmitz is there was a guy with the exact same name who I think in 1996 was invited onto a talk show, and he got embarrassed on that talk show, and he wound up going home and killing somebody else who's on that talk show. So my whole life I'm trying to outdo that guy as far as reaching more people with my name than he has.
Yeah, but different message too.
Yeah, so he wound up killing some guy, and I think last I heard. His earliest day to get out of prison was, I think, June 2017. So he may be out there as well.
There's a killer on the streets right now, is what you're saying.
Exactly, and his name's Jonathan Schmitz. So, just bypass that guy or read his story. It's really fascinating.
Go check out that story. But then go. And then, I'll have links to everything in the caption.
Awesome.
Of the YouTube and the iTunes for the episode, and then you can also check out. I try and double up everything, so you can find all the episode links and the information about the guest on the website as well.
Super cool.
Yeah, dude, thank you so much. We'll have to do this again. This was a lot of fun.
I know, man. And then here it is, that podcast we talked about for a year and a half. For a year.
It exists.
We actually did it.
Well, what's hilarious is like you know, we both have one now. So eventually, when we get big enough, we'll just go back and forth on each other's podcast and just perpetuate each other's podcast.
There we go. Share some listeners.
Yeah, but thanks again, man. I really appreciate it. And everybody, give Jonathan a follow. Go check out his stuff. Check out his music. Check out his podcast, 10 Steps Further. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you, everybody.